Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the November 8th, 2023 Board of Directors meeting. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chris, roll call, please.
Division 1?
Yes, I'm here.
Division 2?
Here.
Division 3?
Here.
Division 4?
Here.
Division 5?
Here.
Okay, we'll have public comment for items not on the agenda. Do you have anything? Okay, seeing nothing, we will move to the consent agenda. Any comments or requests related to the consent agenda?
Yep. I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Public comment on the consent agenda. Seeing none, we'll take a vote.
Division 1?
Yes.
Division 2?
Yes.
Division 4?
Aye.
Division 5?
Yes.
Aye. I get two. Okay, moving on to general order, we'll start with item 4A. Is that Jennifer?
It sure is, and we will ask for assistance from staff as needed. Thank you, President Hall. This is the presentation of the 2024 budget. I think, do we have the, yeah, just as a point of information, our projector is malfunctioning.
I wondered, there was something missing. So there was.
Yeah, I know. It is. So you will be able to view the presentation on your tablet as well as on the larger screen.
Okay.
Oh, well, that works perfect.
And what about the public? They're able to see it?
Yeah. Yeah, the public can see it. So the 2024 annual budget, if adopted today, goes into effect on January 1st. As the board is aware, we start the budgeting process in approximately January of each year. And we can go to the next slide, Chris. We have had 2 budget workshops to date. One was related to the capital workshop, and then one was related to the operating budget. We have made the requested changes into the budget, and I wanted to review those with the board just so you're aware. And they're also in your packet, identifies the first item, which is an update to the salaries. As we stated during the operation budget workshop, we went through and did a fine-tooth comb of the positions within the district, and we have decreased our proposed 2024 full-time equivalent budget, which is our staffing, is decreased to 199 positions.
So I have a question about that. That's a pretty substantial decrease, which we appreciate. But I'm wondering, are there any of those positions that you anticipate? So, like with Hydro, I know there was one position where we have consulting services supporting that prior FTE position.
Correct.
Are there any other examples of that where we have consulting support in lieu of staff positions?
Yes, I'll walk you through it. Let me.
Slide being shown, not in the presentation. This is
It's on.
That's page 69 of our packet.
69.
Yeah.
It shows up as slide 2.
Yeah, one of the challenges, and we've had this issue before, so when we publish the packet through Granicus does a numbering of the packet itself. So when you look at the packet numbers.
There's 2.
There's 2, because the presentation has its own number. It's a little bit of a glitch.
I appreciate having the page numbers on there that correspond.
Right, so we apologize for any confusion. And Sandra, where I'm looking, I should have flagged it before I got here.
If you go to the side of the PowerPoint, I know Chrissy might not work there, but it has the details of
Mhm.
Why don't you go there now, Chris, so we can talk about it?
Well, I mean, if it makes more sense later, it's fine too.
I think it probably makes sense now. And then that way you can keep it in mind as we're going through it, and then we can review it again at the end.
Okay.
Maybe it'll bring it full circle.
And then there's
Yeah.
a detail that starts on page 123.
Not that one, Chris.
Which one's there?
You were on it.
What's on it?
Sandra, Chris is asking a question. Yeah, it's slide 45.
5-page. You're getting there.
All right, there it is. So in this current fiscal year, we have 208 full-time equivalent positions, and we are looking to remove 9 positions. So I'll review them on a fund-by-fund basis, and that will provide the explanation behind the proposed changes. In Fund 10 in water, specifically in engineering, and we'll review this in a little bit more detail in a second, but engineering is a direct allocated division, and that hydro as well as recreation pay their fair share portion of those costs. Engineering, since I've been here, has had 4 open positions in the engineering division, and those positions have not yet been filled. And for a variety of reasons, one was a lot of restructuring that was related to the appointment of Mr. Roderick to the director position, so his former senior engineering position was left open. In hydro, in Fund 50, there were 2 engineering positions, the senior dam engineer and an assistant engineer, and then there is a project manager position. As the board is aware, the senior dam engineer had retired. We went through 2 rounds of recruitment, and we were including using a recruiter, and we were not successful in recruiting a replacement senior dam safety engineer. I've spoken with some other folks in the industry, and this is a challenge that a lot of dam safety consulting firms are having, as well as agencies who own dams. It's a real niche portion of engineering, and engineering in general is seeing a decrease of people going to college for it. So because of that, we had made the determination to consult out the senior dam safety engineering services. So that left 1 engineer, assistant engineer, and a project manager in hydropower. In order to have a larger bandwidth for dam safety engineering activities, we have the consultant, but we also made the internal determination to move dam safety, the 2 remaining dam safety engineers, over into engineering so that we can rely on the larger bench of engineers.
Mm-hmm.
We also felt that it would allow for those engineers better career growth as well, as they could work on dam safety work as their primary duties, and then also fill in on other projects as the availability came up. They're both, one is a newly registered engineer, and the project manager is in the process of taking his PE test right now, his professional engineering exam license, or license exam. So that's the 2 positions, the engineering positions were moved from hydro. They're basically just moved over to engineering, which does also allow for some alleviation of stress on the hydro budget, because to recall, they're direct allocated, and the allocation is split among all 3 of the major operating funds. We also
I like that.
We also removed the senior engineering tech from engineering, and this was more of a direct reflection of now being able to utilize some of the availability of the project managers that we're moving over from, and that was Stu's old position. As we know, Stu just retired,
Right.
and we are doing a lot less hand drafting now, so we felt that it was an efficiency that we could take advantage of. We also are proposing to remove the GIS technician, and this position has been vacant since a retirement 2 years ago. And based off of the current progress and program, we don't feel that we need a second GIS technician. In maintenance, We carefully analyze the amount of vacancies they're constantly running, and so we are proposing to remove 2 utility worker positions that seem to always be vacant. There is a higher level of vacancies within the maintenance department, and that's primarily related to that maintenance is oftentimes a stepping stone for career advancement.
Right.
So a lot of times people come into maintenance, they move to operations, or they move into hydropower. Moving to Fund 30 Recreation, we are proposing to remove a recreation assistant. This position has not been filled for some time.
Generator.
Generator will kick on.
We have Generacs.
We have a giant generator. It'll kick on.
Should come right. Not a Generac.
Should have been,
It's a huge, it's like
there we go.
like half the room.
That was interesting.
IT's got a UPS.
Well done, Doug.
Didn't go down? I'm still connected to it. It never disconnected me.
Are we still up?
I can still hear you. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
They're upgrading our line out there.
All our folks are still there?
Is that what they're doing?
All right, I think we're,
Rough and Ready Highway seems to lose power about every 3 days.
right, this is why we have the giant generator.
No,
Yeah.
I feel terrible for those people who don't get.
Michael, Stillwell, there's somebody online. Can you confirm you can hear us?
Hand up.
Or Deb. Deb, can you hear us still?
Michael Hillwell?
He just,
Yeah, I think Katie can see us. She's not on, she's on remotely.
oh, here, somebody.
All right, we can hear. Okay. All right, sorry for that brief interruption. We had a power outage, so we're back in action. So the recreation assistant has not been utilized for the past year. We actually intended to get rid of the position last year, but for some reason that fell through the cracks. And one of the reasons why we were able to get rid of that particular position is because we moved, if the board will recall, it to address one of our audit findings, we moved cash handling into the customer service. So that position is no longer needed. And then from Fund 50, it looks like there's more people removed than there actually is, and that's because of the switch into Fund 10. So we removed, as you're aware, the dam safety engineer. That position is basically deleted, and it is not recovered by another position added to engineering. We're removing 1 utility worker. The position has not been filled for 2023. And we are trying to be very thoughtful in the determination of resources that are needed for the South Yuba Canal acquisition that just recently occurred. And so we're going through some work planning to understand if we can distribute resources in a manner which will not require us to hire an additional utility worker for the South Yuba Canal. But that is one that we may have to come back to the board at a later date once we have a better handle on the actual workload to request a new position for that. The removal of the project manager and the associate engineer, those 2 positions are transferred to Fund 10 and then allocated back as appropriate to Fund 50.
Thank you for the explanation, and I just want to commend the analysis and to me, this takes the whole management team coming forth because we
Right.
sometimes want to hold our position, so this is a substantial change. And I like the organizational realignment in the engineering group. I think that makes a lot more sense to leverage the resources. But kudos to everyone on that.
Just to follow up on, you mentioned the workload for South Yuba Canal. How's that estimated or analyzed?
So we just are closing, we signed the closing documents on South Yuba Canal 2 days ago. It should actually be recording likely today or tomorrow. What we're gonna have to do is just start tracking how much time we actually have to spend out at the South Yuba Canal. There is always gonna be a natural ramp up on the work with the South Yuba Canal to become more familiar with how it operates, and how much maintenance and operations it actually needs. So as we go through and track that, we'll communicate with Kian and his team to see if the resources we have are adequate or do we need to make an adjustment. Are there any more questions related to staffing before we move forward?
It's hard to do.
It is hard to do, and it is always, it's always challenging to ask staff to take on additional workload or burden or to look for efficiency. So I greatly appreciate the input received from all the department heads, and their willingness to give this a chance. We always say we don't know how it's going to work till we try it, and if it doesn't work, then we're going to have to consider some future adjustment. All right, there was another couple of changes from when you saw the budget at the workshop. We added property tax revenue, or added property tax expenditures of $255,000. They were missing from the hydro fund. So we are required to pay property taxes on parcels that, or properties that are not within the immediate district, so Colfax, the new Whitcomb building. As well as the Centennial properties, we're required to pay property tax. For this particular building, we're not required to pay property tax. There was, we eliminated a duplicate consulting fee from the assessment district funds, so that is Rodeo Flats and Cement Hill. There is annual disclosures that are required when you have an assessment district, and we require a consultant to prepare those documents, and there was duplicates in there, so we removed that. The investment income that is associated with hydro funds investments, so that's essentially the money that is allocated to hydro that's invested on the market. Those revenues associated with investment income were missing from the draft budget. We included those. And then we also updated all the interfund transfers specifically for internal services funding, which is Fund 70, and then the water capital transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 15. So moving on, Chris, to the next slide. All right. So with our budget principles, they're consistent with what we reported on before, and that this is an extremely conservative budget from both an expenditure standpoint and a revenue standpoint. As the board is aware, remember, we have multiple components to the budget. We have staffing, which gets approved by the board annually. We have the revenue component of the operating budgets. The revenue is also approved by the board, operating expenditures, and then capital projects. We kept the capital projects really tight this year, as the board is aware. That is primarily related to our ongoing effort with the Plan for Water, development of the 5-year capital programs for the upcoming rate setting process, and to have a better understanding of moving forward with hydropower and to do some more extensive financial planning related to the funding of the Scotts Flat Spillway project, as well as the Chicago Park Rewind or refurbishment project.
Question here. On page 2 of the packet, this is in your staff, the rate setting process for raw and treated water rates will continue into 2024, and new rates are anticipated to be in effect in the third quarter of 2024. So this is news to me. My understanding was that a rate setting process would be kicked off at the end of Plan for Water, so maybe I misunderstood that. Can you just share what this process is and when it started, when you anticipate it to be done?
So we've already started some of the process. The process is quite extensive on collecting of the data. We have a little bit more work to do on the 5-year capital program planning, and then our plan is to present the capital program on the 5-year basis to the board, receive some feedback, and then continue with the rate setting process. I think that the reference to the rate setting process is more the public part of the process, so we've already began it. Our plan is hopefully to have them in new rates in place by third quarter 2024. And that is backing off from now the work we have left to complete, and then the Prop 218 requirements for public hearing and public noticing.
Yeah, so what's the time frame on that piece? If you're planning to have something in effect in the third quarter of 24, working backwards, like what does that look like?
So,
Notification to the public.
yeah,
Yeah, so right now, you're working on the cost of service analysis. Once you have that done, the board, stay with it. There's a notice that officially starts the public process. It goes to all customers, all record owners. Then a minimum of a 45-day waiting period where that, notice is in the public being discussed. Typically, although not required, there are some board workshop type items where question and answer. At the end of the minimum 45-day period, we come back, we hold a public hearing, count protests. And if there are protests, then you're precluded from moving forward with the rate change. Hopefully, we won't have, but you still have to go through the hearing process.
So is it fair to say you need about 60 days before you would be able to enact this? Or let's say it goes through, there's no protest. Like, is there a public time?
No.
At that
There'll be a
point?
resolution before we'll close the public hearing, we'll make sure there's not a majority protest at the same meeting. And once we assure there's no majority protest, we will present you with a resolution implementing the change. There will be an effective date. And usually it'll depend on billing cycle, is it on the first of the month or,
Sure.
But,
We have to be sensitive to the beginning of the raw water season on the implementation of the rate.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get to.
Definitely.
People are turning water on the 15th,
Mm-hmm.
and this sounds like we might, to meet this statement that was on page 2, you might only need to have the public process kicked off in June, July timeframe to still meet Q3.
Oh, this past June, July timeframe?
No, coming.
Oh, coming.
45 days plus enacting some, amount of time for people to
Yeah.
make the payment.
We will have, Chip and I have had a couple of discussions regarding it, but we will have to do some more work on calendaring it. But one thing that the board does have an option to do is always to put an effective date of something later, in order to not disrupt the customers for that particular irrigation season. So we will do some analysis on backing the dates out and then provide some recommendations to the board so you have a choice of what you feel is best for the customers.
Okay.
Is it safe to say there would be no rate increase to raw water users for 2024?
That's all dependent on board action. I think that
Absolutely not what this says. This says that there's an intention to bring to us in Q3 next year a water rate increase, three suggested water rate, or maybe it says multiple, for us to vote on, and that could be enacted for the end of the season.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it'll probably be a month or two we're talking about out of the whole season.
But to start, we're not gonna have the figures that we start the year,
In April.
the
Correct.
irrigation year.
correct. It is not likely that this would be, it's not going to be done,
Right.
enacted before April.
But the last part of what I heard you say is that as a board, we could act to say, okay, we accept this, but it's effective next April 15th.
Yep, you could do that.
Just pointing out that we have a projected $4 million+ loss
Right.
for this year, so somehow that loss has to be made up in the rate. So, I mean, we may push the can down the road, but ultimately the customers are gonna have to pay for that.
Well, I don't think that, well, this is something we can discuss later, but I don't think that we're gonna vote to raise rates $4 million for the last month of irrigation season.
but-
And it's a little tongue in cheek because part of this would be on the,
But you have to make,
On the
my
treated
point
water.
is that you have to operate on a balanced budget. You're, kind of looking at even a period of years, and that if you have a $4 million loss in the current year, it ultimately has to be accounted for
of course.
in the rate.
Somebody has to pay.
Somebody has to
Somewhere.
pay.
So my question is, we know we have a $4 million deficit. That's not good enough to provide a nexus for water rate increases?
No, the cost of service study that's required under Prop 218 has to demonstrate that the cost you're charging each particular customer class has a direct relationship to the cost to provide that service to that customer class. So just a general budget deficit, it would not legally substantiate a rate increase.
And that's how
And I have a final question about the whole thing, about the process, because Trevor was not surprised, because we've been talking about a need for a rate increase, but the process, and you mentioned the cost of service study, is that ongoing already with one of our, HDR, or are they?
We have a consultant?
It's Bartle Wells, and no, we have initiated pulling all of the work together. The next task on you have to pull a lot of water use data and financial data together. That's all collected. The next task is to bring forth a 5-year capital CIP to the board to receive input on. Then once that is pretty solid, then they'll start crunching the numbers.
I'm just a little lost in when we pull the trigger, did we pull the trigger and say we're going to initiate this process? That's all. I know we've been talking about it, but, I don't think we.
It was built into this current year's budget.
Okay.
The service day. So we essentially approved the task to go do the cost of service.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with him, though. I haven't heard anyone from staff say this has started, and this is the schedule.
That's my point.
It seems like it's very,
Right.
like it should be in some notes.
Well, I've heard it multiple times.
Me too.
Actually, I've been told the opposite, that we need to get through
We're gonna
the
get
plan
through
for water,
Right.
reiterated multiple times, and then we'll work on the rate study. I mean, that's what I've heard multiple times, so.
So there's,
Not to negate what you're saying, I think that it's just a misunderstanding, because
it is.
we have heard times that the rate study was started. It was part of the work plan Jennifer identified last February. She's talked multiple times about the fact that it was ongoing, but she has also said that the plan for water had to reach a certain point so that we have the ability to do the 5-year CIP estimate. And so, I mean, I was clear where we are, and I'm tracking.
Yeah, I think this probably goes to a different frustration of mine that we can talk about at the time, that it seems like we have different communication channels with staff here that we should probably resolve. Because clearly 2 of us have heard different.
I'm saying what I heard in a meeting, not here in a public meeting, just for clarification. I'm not saying I heard it separately from Jennifer. I heard it in this room, and I'm sure if we look back on tapes, we would see that Jennifer has said it multiple times.
So maybe I could just ask that we get a schedule.
Sure thing.
So change the subject. 2023 is the second year in a row there's been no price increases.
Right.
2024 looks like there'll be another one. Plus and minuses, people get used to a lower cost water while expenses keep going up.
Exactly.
Just, it's going to be our job to get out there and explain, hey, we haven't raised them for 3 years, but everything has gone up.
Right.
And water has become a lot harder to get in California, especially with the Bay Delta.
Right, and as you've pointed out many times, the inflation factor that the had to deal with.
Correct.
Part
So,
of
it's,
that
we got a lot of work ahead of us next year when we do go 218, and then just explain it.
Well, you know what, that's part of the community outreach that I've been doing, Karen's been doing, we've been doing it together. I know I think most of us have all been out in the community, and for me, part of that was kind of an advance warning, if you will, or, some education about, here's our infrastructure, here's the problem, you guys see how much this costs to take care of, that translates to increase in rates. And one of the last ones that Karen and I did together, a customer who's actually one of Chris's most vocal constituents, she came up to me afterwards and said, okay, I get it, you have to raise rates. I said, that's right, okay, I got it. So, but I mean, I'm just saying, that we should continue to do it, I guess that's the point.
And I think we're doing it in a lot more orderly manner than other districts, that you could pay something and then next year 5 times that. And other districts that don't have the water rights that we have, they're subject to the open market, and that open market can fluctuate big time.
Can I ask one more question? This is of Dustin. when we spoke about the protests, so some of us have been through that process the last time, and I think at least 3 people have not. Can you recall for us, please, the threshold of protests that are required in order to, what the rules or the boundaries around the protest?
So I'll use simple math.
Okay, great.
Let's imagine you sent out 10 notices, because you get 10 customers. A majority of those have to come back, so it would be 6 or more, or for there to be a majority protest, under which circumstance you could not move forward with your proposed rate. If there's not a majority protest, so it's 5 or less.
The majority of the customers, I just want to get that clear, not of property owners.
It's of the parcels, really, of the parcels that are subject to the proposed rate change, which for the district, I mean, we're in the 28, off memory, 28,000, something like that.
Close.
Yeah, it's a significant number.
So the number of protests would have to be 50% plus 1, the 28,000.
And it's highly unlikely, statistically, you know,
Right.
when you look across California, but not impossible.
Right.
I have seen it happen before.
Can I just clarify what you were saying? So it's all the parcels in the district or all the active ratepayers?
That are subject to the proposed change in rates.
But a parcel that's in the district that isn't taking water is not subject to this, is not,
Correct.
Does not have a vote.
yeah.
Well, wait, but, okay, so someone owns a lot and they're paying their standby fees every year. They're not subject to a rate increase.
No,
They've got a box, they got a meter, they got all that.
that's a fee.
Oh, okay.
It's not a rate established under Prop 280.
Oh, okay, thank you. That was the difference. Okay, good.
And I'd also like to note on the last go-around, we thought, that we had a lot of
It was significant.
Yeah, it was
Significant
4,000 or
purchase.
6,000 or something.
but almost half of those were illegal. They were, wasn't the number, something like, anyway. It wasn't anywhere near the threshold, that's the point.
All right, next slide, please. We've already touched on this one, so I'll be pretty quick. The budget has 3 main components: revenue, operating expenditures, and then capital expenditures. And then as with last year, the new administration accounting code was added for each major fund, and that is the 114, and that's for basically non-department specific expenses, insurance, interfund transfers, debt service. A lot of those things were occurring before, but they weren't budgeted for, and so this is a method to be more transparent to the board as well as to the public, and also to be able to pull more accurate reporting. Next slide, Chris. So our budget overview, we have a total projected inflows of $109 million. This is all sources of revenue. As we move forward through the next year, do anticipate that we are going to bring back more frequent kind of adjustments for the budget so that as we go on and on, we're tightening how we manage the budget up more and more. So one thing you will sometimes see us adjust is revenue. If we're seeing revenue coming in lower or higher, we will make those adjustments so that we have a clearer picture of what's going on. And transfers are up this year, and that is essentially related to that the prior year, it wasn't necessary to make large transfers from the operating parent funds to the capital funds because there was sufficient money remaining in those funds. And this year we are proposing the transfer from the parent funds from Fund 10 to Fund 15 and Fund 50 to Fund 55 in the amount that is equal to the proposed annual capital expenditure.
Can I ask a quick question on revenue? It says that it's mostly flat. And then in the plan for water, when we talk about baseline demand, we're talking about the current demand plus an actual increase based on history, annual history. So I'm wondering if the annual increase in raw water sales is so nominal that it basically results in this almost being flat statement, or is it that the audit gave you more accurate information of where we actually are, and then, I mean,
It's that.
okay.
It's the latter. So we went through and did some additional revenue analysis on a year-over-year basis based off of actuals. The previous projections that were used were higher. They were basically applying a flat percentage on revenue adjustment for specifically water, and that's,
Assumption versus,
and so we've lowered that assumption, and that's just more to be in line with being conservative.
Okay.
And then it also, revenue with water is largely dependent on water use. So anytime we have water restrictions or a really wet year, water use goes down, so revenue naturally goes down.
so can I follow up on
Sure.
that? Thank you. So then if you turn to slide, I think it's 119, where it gives a really good breakdown of this is the revenue summary.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, I get that the revenue's going down, but do we know why? For instance, you've got, 800,000+ in revenue in water fund, so that means you're expecting, shorter water sales? Is that what?
Conservation.
Yeah, it's a reflection of conservation, and it's also a reflection of when we solidified the final 2023 number. We had already made the projections for 2024, and we stopped utilizing the previous methodology as just doing a year-over-year percentage increase. And so it's just more of a reflection of trying to be conservative.
Okay, and so then I have really the same question on the hydro fund. It's down, 405,000. It's like, why is that? Why is that revenue down? Is that because of the cost of power?
Same thing, hydropower revenue with one powerhouse specifically is a little bit more volatile, and that's related to Combi South. And that's because in a situation where we have a wet year with Combi South, you can make a lot more money than in a dry year. So we try to be conservative in that revenue projection to not be banking on having a really wet year.
Okay.
So you'll see a lot of those.
NID did that one.
Well, wait, then I just wanted a capacity fees. You've got those at $200,000. Just wanted to go through each one of these, if you don't mind.
The capacity fees is reduced by $200,000. Capacity fees are collected when there's new connections, and Loma Rica was a fairly large project that was moving forward. So the previous year, we had increased those capacity fee projections.
Didn't they not pay?
Due to, I'm not sure of the full status of that project, but we're not anticipating as much development because of the economy, and we're already seeing a reduction in home sales. So that's why we look.
Is Lincoln Village 7 NID?
Lincoln Village 7 is not NID. Yeah,
That just got voted down.
I had heard that.
Let's vote.
Yeah, there was a protest vote. They will try to carve out that neighborhood, yeah.
They'll save it, but
Yeah.
that is, as of today.
So Loma Rica pays when they hook up, right?
As people pull building permits, they pay. So
So we're waiting for that money to come in.
That's the way it was restructured, right?
Right.
We changed that she paid versus having the developer pay more.
Right.
They pay when they come for water.
And that's why we have a decrease.
Yeah.
Well, it's also decreased because we're projecting less homes hooking up.
Right, and then I've been told in that Loma Rica development, like many right now, is, they're gonna be kind of on hold, and they're not going to go forward with quite the plan that they thought they had. So everything is gonna be slowed down, less connections, less, all of that. Okay,
All right,
thank you for that explanation,
all right, next slide, please, Chris.
I want to make a point on Combi South, because that's subject to the open market,
Yes.
correct? And there was times, like I think December stuff, it was just making money, but there was times in the spring where we're gonna have to pay people to take the energy.
Yeah, there's times where we shut that powerhouse off.
That is just, so I like your conservative approach.
Yeah.
Because we don't know which one we're gonna get into.
No, we don't know if we're gonna have a wet or dry year, and we also can't totally predict the energy market on a daily basis. So
we appreciate the conservative revenue. I just wanted to get an understanding of, what your thinking was behind it.
Well, and it also reflects that you got the audit done so timely.
Oh my God, I know.
That
Historic.
you could pull that accurate data and information where I don't think we could in past years.
No, we couldn't have.
yeah, the, level of improvement in the accounting of the district's finances
Thank
is
you.
amazing. So huge thank you to Sandra.
Yeah, they've been working very hard.
Yeah, we went from having when I first got here, we would do about 80 adjustments after fiscal year end close, and now they're down to a normal amount, 9, 10. So it's big kudos to them.
Oh, yay. Okay, sorry.
All right, the expenditure totals, one of the things reason why the expenditure totals look higher is because of those interfund, total outflows include interfund transfers.
Understood.
The interfund transfers are higher this year because, in compared to last year, because we didn't make the interfund transfers for the capital program. The capital projects total is down, so as the board is aware, we really tightened the capital program this year, and that was a reflection of the items we spoke about earlier.
Does that give us a little
Thanks, Chris.
extra in case something happens, like Squirrel Creek happened?
We have a little bit extra in case something happens. Definitely depends on the extent of that, what that something happens, and then we would use reserves if it was significant enough. Overview of the funds, this is...
A quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
On the capital projects at $13.5 million and equaling 12% of our operating expenses, in a steady state, what percentage, I mean, maybe this is not an answerable question, but what percentage would you expect to be investing as a district in capital on an ongoing basis?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great question, and it's something we'll have to wrestle with a little bit during the rate setting. So there's two different methodologies that people utilize to establish capital budgets or capital reserve funding. One is you do kind of what we've been talking about, setting that five-year capital program, and then you set a 10-year capital program so that you don't have big fluctuations in the rates when you go between years 5 and 6, so you can do some smoothing. The other methodology is to essentially put away a sum of money that is equal to a certain percentage of the depreciation of your assets that are booked on your financials. This district has historically done the pay-as-you-go program, which I think is probably the right way to go for us. Our infrastructure capitalization is a little bit difficult to ascertain if it's reflective of improvements that will need to be made into the future, because the capitalization threshold was so low before that there's a lot of nickel and diming capitalization going on. Given that we have some very large infrastructure projects on the books coming forward, specifically with Scott Spot Spillway and the Chicago Park refurbishment, as well as some work that's going to need to be done to Combi, I think that we're going to have to look at a capital pay-as-you-go and then start setting the appropriate expenditures. In our case, because how large those construction projects are, you'll see this percentage of the capital expenditures as a percentage of the overall budget fluctuate year to year because of having those big year expenditures.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a lot of catch-up to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of requirements to fulfill.
The overview of the funds, we did not add any new funds this year, so that is different than previous years since I've been here. We have Fund 10, water operations. Fund 12 is capacity fees, so those are the new connections, that fees we collect related to those. Then we have Fund 15, which is water capital. Fund 10, 12, and 15, as well as to an extent 20 and 22, are all sub-funds of its parent fund, Fund 10. Fund 21, Summit Hill, and Fund 22 are the two assessment districts that we're still managing. Fund 30 is recreation operations. Fund 35 is recreation capital. Fund 50 is hydroelectric operations. Fund 55 is a sub-fund of the parent fund, Fund 50, and that's the hydro capital fund. And the move to make these into their separate funds will greatly aid us in future analysis or rates or anything else. We're really going to be able to pull out better data as opposed to before capital expenditures were rolled up into just the operating fund. And then Fund 70 is internal services fund. The revenue fund for Fund 10, we kind of rolled, there's several different revenue categories that we use for accounting purposes, but we rolled a lot of those up for you. So you can see we are trying to be extremely conservative in our revenue projections, and the biggest one is the non-commercial inside. So that's where that big delta comes from. Property tax revenue is limited increases that are based off of
Valuation.
the valuation of the property. And then investment income, we're also keeping pretty steady. Transfers in, these transfers in that are coming into Fund 10 are primarily related to the engineering cost allocation, and that, those funds are coming from both Fund 50 and Fund 30. Next slide, please, Chris. So revenue recreation is also has been a little bit of a projected increase, over the 2023 budgeted numbers, but our projections for 2025 are exceeding the 2023 numbers. This projected revenue increase does not include any potential fee increase that the board may enact. That item will be coming before the board in December. So if the board does decide to increase the recreation fees, then we can make an adjustment to the projected revenues at some time in 2024.
So on revenues, late start, upper division was
Really
closed
late.
for a long time, and we're still 230,000, no, a little more than that, 280,000 over, the budget.
Yeah, remember that we have been projecting revenues for recreation for 2021 and 2022 extremely low because they were still recovering from all of the shutdowns.
But
You're bouncing back.
We're just not sure how far we're gonna bounce.
yeah, but great job. I mean, 280,000 more and late start.
And our the increase that we voted on last year wasn't a multi-year increase, it was just for that
It was an annual increase.
annual, okay.
But the increase still stays into effect forever, let's say.
Right,
Yeah.
so it compounds in whatever we do.
So now if we do another increase, the board adopts another increase.
Right,
and then
right.
compound on top of
I
that.
thought we had done it multi-year, but thank you.
I have a comment. It looks like Fund 30 is transferring 720,000 of its 400 million budget, or, sorry, $4 million budget. That'd be nice. To Fund 70, and in the staff notes it says for the fair share of internal services, that's about 18%, that seems reasonable. Hydro's sending 1.7 million to rec. This is about 43% of that $4 million budget. And this equals, if my math is right, to about 68% of the actual revenue that rec brings in. So what I take away from this is that for every dollar someone spends at one of these facilities, revenue brought in, ratepayers or property owners in the district are paying 68 cents.
The ratepayers are subsidizing recreation.
Significantly.
Yes.
It's not a minor subsidy. And we'll get into it later, but even in your notes, you spell out that the original intent for the hydro, and I think I use those words specifically because I think that that's what is quoted. The original intent was to provide a subsidy to water rates. So this is a direct increase to water rates for, well, it's a direct impact, I shouldn't say increase, that's a bad word. A direct impact for water rates that we're about to vote on an increase for. So just wanted to bring that.
You can look at it that way, but without performing recreation, probably couldn't have hydro. Because
Yeah, I don't think
it's a
it's arguing that.
yeah, it's a requirement of FERC.
Right.
And our job is to reduce that requirement as much as we can, so it doesn't impact the water rates. It's a catch-22, and I'm not sure how we're going to be. I'm with you in that
Well,
we have to get recreation up to paying for itself,
Self-sustaining, yeah.
and so it doesn't have an impact on water rates. But without it, we don't have,
And we've been
hydro is
chipping away at
paramount.
it, and Monica and her team have been doing a great job in helping,
Yeah.
so we're chipping away at the amount.
Yeah, I just don't think the public realizes that
The subsidy.
every dollar
They don't.
that hydro, or the rec, and it's a good dollar this year, right? I mean, they did a very good job
Yeah.
at maximizing that dollar.
Yes.
Still, every one of those dollars, we're taking 68 cents out of my pocket and anyone else that contributes to this district to subsidize. And if I remember right, in the presentation, the majority of the folks visiting are from outside the district. So we're basically subsidizing, folks from outside the district's vacations. And, I just don't think that that's right, and I think the public should understand that.
Definitely. So when we bring forward the recreation item that is gonna be also on the December agenda, one of the things we're presenting is what does a full cost recovery look like? And then I've also asked Monica, to the extent that we can, is to pull data out of the system of where people are coming from. So to your point, is that our ratepayers are subsidizing other people from
out of the area.
We have, Ricky, we have a discussion in the past about, splitting them out from district,
Well, we did, yeah, we
talked
did.
about that.
We played around with that idea.
and backing it onto those that.
Right, an additional fee or something
Yeah.
for those who are out of area, but I think, you know, Monica made, this is what I remember,
Yeah.
is that she made a good argument for, oh my God, you know, to do that would be
A
really
nightmare.
a nightmare.
Location.
Right.
Well, and that, you know, when people get wise to it, it's like, well, they'll use this friend's driver's license or, you know, whatever, and it becomes a hard thing to police, so we had an idea, but it didn't go forward.
The good news is,
Yeah.
we have an attractive facility.
We have the most
And we
beautiful.
have raised the rate and without any, backlash.
My family that's outside the district is not gonna be happy with the comment I just made.
Well, so our job,
And they won't use my address.
our
It's to
job
balance
is
it.
to help Monica and Jennifer, so it's self-sufficient.
Right.
And also to realize that, you know, yes, we are subsidizing a little bit now, but the bigger picture is hydro subsidizes water rates
Yeah.
to a much bigger extent.
Right.
And
Good point.
without hydro, water rates would be a lot higher.
I have a final ask, to my question. Previously, we discussed with the two of you, I did, in a previous meeting, I don't know if it was last, board meeting or two. I would like to see the substantiation on why this is required by FERC. I believe and trust that it is. I would just like to read it,
Definitely,
understand the verbiage.
yeah.
I'll send you an email reminding you
And
and follow up on it.
we'll bring that also in the December board meeting. Some of the facilities are required by the FERC license for the Yuba Bear project, and some are related to money received under the Quimby-Ac. The Quimby-Ac money is the one we're still unwinding, but we'll have that done for you.
Okay.
All right, and then we'll move on, Chris. With the revenue for Fund 50, this is consistent with what we showed during the workshop with the addition of the interest income, which we had previously forgotten. So there's power generation, interest income that's related to the money that's proportionally associated with hydropower. Then with the hay press transmission line, cost sharing, as well as the hydroelectric support services with South Sutter Water District. Those, we budget those extremely low because on a contractual monthly operation basis, they are low, but they can be increased when it's related to the, any capital projects that they need completed. So we also kept those extremely low by design.
Been a good year at 127,000,
And that was, primarily because of the wet year.
and they needed more help, more assistance.
Oh, you're talking about for South Sutter. Yeah, they had some things break out at Camp Far West. I couldn't detail what exactly they were, but it did cost them more money.
Yeah, no, there were just some, there was also a lot of switching that we had to go do. He's been working on the transmission line down there a lot, so their demands were just higher than expected. So.
And going forward, what were their revenues that they made off of,
We don't have, probably parts of that out of their documents, but we don't see that into the.
I don't think they report that to us.
And this is also,
Yeah.
right, and this is also a conversation that the board does need to weigh in at, that we will bring forth, is whether or not we continue this contractual relationship with South Sutter.
Yeah, they got.
Or change the fee, I mean, you
Yes.
know.
Yes.
Right?
So I have a
We're trying to play
comment
nice.
here as well, or a question.
Expect that back.
As I mentioned on the previous slide, reading from page 10, your staff notes, the hydroelectric system was originally intended to be used to subsidize water rates for the district's customers. I'm just curious of the verbiage there, originally intended. It was mentioned a couple times in the presentations, the packet. What's the current intent? Do you think that intention has changed?
To use hydro revenue to,
Yeah, I'm just wondering why it says originally intended or instead of just is intended.
Still is.
Is intended.
I don't think there was any thought behind the words.
Could I ask that we change originally to intended, the intended use of hydro is to offset water rates?
In the staff report?
Yeah,
We'll note that in the minutes.
okay, that's perfect. I don't want you to have to redo the report.
I agree with you that the intention of hydro is revenues to subsidize our operations and water rates. And, it's just getting harder and harder to make a profit at hydro.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree as well. And,
I think we all agree.
and I appreciate the presentation you put together with your team for last month's, meeting that was delayed to after this budget cycle. It's unfortunate because I think there's some really good value in there. With that, I'm curious if the hydro team finds it important to be able to understand what it costs to operate each of the locations and what revenue can be generated at each of those locations by themselves. Is that important to your business?
Yeah, to understand which power make revenue and yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that it's essential. Like, any business should know whatever the widget is that they're building, what it costs to build, and what you can sell it for, right? Otherwise, why are we in business? So, it's my goal, and it has been, I really have only had two focuses here for this year. One was making sure that the modeling that was being done is without hold, so that when we do a rate study, which impacts paying for water rates, that the data is good. And the second one is really understanding how we can maximize hydroelectric to, again, keep those water rates low. In both Nevada County and more so in Placer County, every year, $10 million increase in ag. And the only way we do that is more ag subscribers getting water, and we need to keep the water rates low. So it's going to be my focus to make sure that we understand that. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have these discussions, and we've had some this morning and over the last few days that I don't think everyone's privy to. But in those discussions, there's at least one location that seems to be troublesome financially.
We're kind of diverging from this budget discussion, and we have on the agenda for December an overview of hydro presented by Kian and Jennifer, and I'd like to direct our conversation back to the budget and continue that conversation.
Yeah, I
next month.
appreciate that. I just wanted Kian to know that I find value in what you put together for us last month. It's unfortunate we didn't get to see it.
All right, Chris, we'll move on to the fund balance summary. The fund balance summary is very similar to the fund balance summary that was proposed during the operating budget workshop, with the exception that the changes that we previously noted, most notably the revenue adjustments associated with investment income for hydro are now shown in there, as well as reductions associated with the salary due to the proposed staffing modifications are reflected in here, as well as the adjustment to the double booking of the consulting fees for the assessment districts is also reflected. Just walking you through the table so that you can better understand, obviously the first column is the fund and the fund description. And then one thing we did this year as a reflection of questions we received last year is to put a little key down at the bottom so that you can see how the columns add up together.
Appreciate that, thank you.
So the beginning fund balance is always something that is constantly changing, and it has to do with our projections of money and revenues that will be received through the completion of this year, as well as expenditures that will occur through the completion of this year. As the board is aware, we don't finalize any final accruals till the end of fiscal year end close, and those are primarily associated with OPEB payments or unfunded liabilities, things like that, that you can't do till the end of the fiscal year. So that number does constantly change, but we do constantly try to update that number. And that's one of the items that Sandra and I were talking about this year, is bringing back more routine adjustments to those numbers so that we can really keep tightening things up and the board can have more discussions, more transparency about what is changing after we close the fiscal year. We then have this next column, column B, is projected revenue, and then transfers in. So revenue plus transfers in equal total inflows. So transfers in are interfund transfers, so that's not new money coming into the giant bucket of money. It's money being moved from one layer of the bucket to another. So B plus C equals the total inflow. Then we have expenditures and transfers out, and that equals the total outflows. And then we make a projected year-end fund balance projection. And then we're kind of, we have a little typo on this. Formula got busted on the recreation fund. We'll fix that for you.
We're dipping into balances for about $4,800,000.
Yeah, a lot of that was related to the transfers, though.
And then, are we going to see this amount of transfers in and transfers out in years forward?
Yeah, the idea is that the rates should be, our methodology for the rates is to propose to the board to establish a rate component that is related to capital expenditures.
Right.
That would show it separately on a customer's bill so they can see where their money's going towards. But that would also give the capital funds a specific source of revenue as opposed to just being buried in the in operating fund. So for right now, the capital fund expenditures associated with the water fund is paid for by transfer that's equal to the proposed annual capital expenditure. Moving forward into the future, it would have its own source of revenue, so you wouldn't see that transfer. You're likely still to always see that transfer for hydro because it only has one source of revenue. There's no dedicated source just for capital.
Mm-hmm.
And so as our financial consultants who are doing a really good job, get us, position us into higher interest rates.
Our investments?
Our investments.
Yes.
They'll go into all these various funds, or they go into number 10?
The investment revenue we receive? Yeah. No, the investment revenue is distributed proportional to each fund's total balance that's in all of the fund balance. That was a change
with Jennifer's arrival.
Right.
It used to just
go into the big general.
went into like the sky.
Before it actually was, before all went to hydro. So before.
Was that where it went? I knew it all went one way.
Yeah, hydro didn't pay for administrative overhead expenditure.
Oh, that's right, I remember that.
And so the policy is written, so they received all of the investment revenue, but it was kind of, it didn't make much sense because those two aren't, well, they're not related at all.
Right.
Right. I'm looking forward to that higher interest rates, and it's a great move. And
yeah, one of the things we do when we start looking at those large infrastructure projects is we do tap into our financial advisors for advice on whether or not it's more beneficial for the district to issue long-term debt or to use cash on hand.
Mm-hmm.
So we will bring that item forward. Fund 10, water operations, Chris. The only changes that are reflected in these proposed numbers are related to essentially the salary number adjustments, with reducing some of the salaries. There is, some fairly significant debt services paid, and that is one of the items that is on Sandra and I's list for this year to really tackle, is to go through the remaining bond debt as well as the state revolving fund loan that the district received from the water board, and to understand better whether it's it would be beneficial for the district to re-amortize that loan, because a portion of those loan payments are paid by the assessment district. So look forward to this next year for seeing some conversation about those items.
You know, back, Chris, this was a few years ago, we realized that, we were paying on the bonded indebtedness, that we were paying a pretty high interest rate, and that's when the interest rates had fallen. So we I call it refinance, but
It is.
there's another word.
They call it reissuance.
Reissuance.
It is a
So,
refinance.
but we got a really good interest rate
Yeah.
by doing that.
Yeah.
So, and now I think that probably holds pretty well.
It's doing great, yeah. No, that bond is really good. You know, there's a little bit of closeout that needs to be done with those bonds, but we'll bring that item back.
Okay.
It'd be great to do it with CalPERS too.
Yeah, the CalPERS Trust, so we also have coming on deck, and I'm not quite sure the scheduling of it, is an item to review unfunded liability associated with pensions as well as other post-employee benefits, such as retiree health care. So we'll also be taking a look at those. There's been some valuation changes that have been occurring related to updates in actuarial studies. So we will be bringing in an expert to talk about those things. It does get a little bit complex, but that is something that the district really needs to start planning for.
That's
We're
true.
looking fairly good on an OPEB basis. Our OPEB liability did increase, and that was associated with the discount rate, but also with making some corrections to the historic employee census that was being provided to CalPERS. But the unfunded liability is more of a concern for me, and that needs some focused attention and a actual plan for paydown. Next slide, Chris. The engineering cost allocation, as we have indicated, we do a transfer from Fund 30 and Fund 50 into Fund 10 to pay for their fair share portion. So the split is still the same, 65, 5%, 30%. We do monitor this to ensure that it's fair and accurate, but this is what we're proposing for this year. And this does reflect the staffing changes. Fund 10, water operations, salaries. We are showing, so you'll see this slide is showing you the variance between what we proposed and what we have submitted in the budget versus the final budget. So you can see what the difference is. I'm unsure what the increase in non-operating labor was. I don't think that's correct.
Can I ask a general question, which is, when we did the labor contract, we had identified a number of positions that were outside of the salary increase for the rest.
Right.
Everyone was getting a X amount of action, salary action, but there were a number of employees whose salaries, even with that adjustment, would remain significantly below market, and you were going to adjust those separately as you felt was appropriate. And I'm wondering if that is reflected in the budget.
No, it is not. Any adjustments that are proposed, if there is not enough availability or room within the operating budget, they would require a budget amendment. Typically, we can do some absorbing through vacant positions, but we'll have to analyze that on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
And I'm gonna report back on this number. I kind of feel like these are flip-flopped. I don't know what it means by non-op.
Non-operating labor.
Oh, you know what? This is related to engineering. This is related to moving the engineering.
Moving those positions over.
I ask one question, so, there was, I'm looking at the number, there was a certain amount of money in the budget for, engineering for rec. Like, what kind of projects is that being used for?
It's mostly related to doing the encroachment permitting for the docks at Combi. There's been a long time issue out there related to
Boy, that's the truth.
illegal docks. It's mostly that.
Gotcha.
In other years, it could be related to any type of small engineering projects that they may have. You know, that number could be adjusted on a year-by-year basis, so we'll definitely keep an eye on it. So in looking at the reserves, this is one policy that's been on deck to get revised. We have been taking a look at it, doing some number crunching, but we also need to look at it in the context of the rate setting process, because your reserve levels do impact your rates. So what we did is provided an analysis of the current reserve policy and how we're kind of looking at it for this particular budget. So, Director Beerwagen had a great question related to reserves. You know, he's kind of asking, where do these reserves live and what happens to them year over year? So the reserve in any particular fund, because these are not legally restricted reserves, like, for example, when you have bonds, you are required to have a specific reserve as a fiscal agent of the bond. That's not what these reserves are. They're reserved by policy. And so in the current policy, the policy states that we are supposed to have an operating reserve that's equal to 6 months of operating expenditures, a water stabilization reserve, which was no set amount by policy, and that was intended to provide for revenue in the event that there was a significant drought, and we implemented the drought contingency, and then there was a reduction in revenue received. There's no set amount. The community investment reserve, that was a maximum of the 1.5 million, and that was associated with the district funded water line extension programs, which are no longer moving forward. And then there was an insurance and catastrophic reserve, which was a minimum of 5 million, a maximum of 10 million. And that was to be split with hydroelectric, and that was to handle any particular emergency situations that we may have. This was more important when we were self-insured. We're no longer self-insured. We purchased insurance. There was a watershed stewardship reserve at 500,000, and then the accrued leave reserve. And so when we went through and looked at this current budget, the reserves that are stated by policy exceed the available monies that we have remaining in the unassigned fund balance for the water fund. And we've also done a little bit of a deeper dive on the reserves. And so what we are proposing this year is that the projected ending fund balance is about 23 million for Fund 10. We are proposing operating reserve of 20 million. So an operating reserve is to ensure you always have, that's equal to the 6 months expenditures. It's designed to ensure you have enough cash flow all the time. That reserve is very decent and can handle any type of emergency. The water rate stabilization reserve, we do not feel is necessary. There is enough money in the operating reserve. We don't need the community investment reserve anymore due to the fact that we don't have district funded water line extension program. Insurance and catastrophic reserve, we also do not feel is necessary due to the high amounts of capital reserve we have, and as well as we have insurance. Our deductibles are not that high. If there was any type of catastrophic event that occurred, we would tap into our capital reserves that we have sitting on the books in the capital funds to make any repairs, and then in most cases, we would get emergency funding back at overtime. And then the accrued leave reserve, we're only recommending that be funded at 250,000. By policy, it's actually stated to be funded at 50% of the accrued liability. The accrued liability for leave is the cost of all of the leave basically on your books. And
Right.
So the liability reduces your fund balance, but it is not likely you're ever going to have to pay out 50% of your accrued liability. We've never had 50% turnover. So we kind of look at who we think is retiring, what big pots of money, and kind of look at it year-over-year basis to put some money aside. So we are proposing the reserves for Fund 10 only are about 20 million this year. And then so we'll still have about 2.16 million in unassigned fund balance to be used for any kind of one-off things if the board were so to approve a budget adjustment, or if it was even needed.
Got it. So that's your buffer.
Yeah.
Hmm? So, water rate stabilization reserve, I think we blew by that in 1 year.
Yes, we
In
did.
2013, 2014, yeah. And so once we would go to operations and management or maintenance costs, and then sell water separately, that takes the place of the water rate stabilization.
Right. So when we go into the next rate setting process, one of the things we'll have to have a conversation about is how do you fund drought contingency? One methodology, which I think is probably better for the district, it provides more stability, is to increase the fixed portion of your rates. then you're not so subjected to volatility associated with volume. The other option is to have some type of drought rate, which is largely unpopular.
Very,
Oh, boy, no kidding.
Yeah, people, you know, what essentially that
Get
means is you have a normal rate, and then in time of drought, you have a new rate, and that really upsets customers.
Wasn't that set at 25%?
20.
20%?
Yeah.
It varies based on the stage of drought contingency.
Oh, that's right.
10 to 50%.
That's right.
That's a hard one for customers. They get extremely upset.
I wasn't here for that. So are you saying that the second option is to increase the rates when you're asking people to use less water?
Yeah.
So basically pay
Right.
for the same amount,
Right.
but you're not getting the.
Right.
That's the current rate structure.
That is how it is.
And they get very, very, very angry about that.
So in other districts, especially two others that I'm in, if we're part of the district, they pay for the district. Then you pay separate for the water, and the water can fluctuate depending on how much there is or whatever. But if you're gonna be part of the district, that's operations and maintenance. And it's a method that everybody seems to accept.
So
Maybe
can you
not
cite,
like.
can you cite an example of one of those districts? I'm intrigued by that.
I'll go Orland Artois Water District, for him. You pay operations and maintenance, you also pay for paying back the bureau for putting the thing in. Then there's a third payment to somebody, and then.
But it's an accounting, right?
Then the fourth thing you pay for water.
Mhm.
Okay.
And you can buy water that is, if they only get so much of allotment, you get a certain price. But then if you need more water, you can pay, who knows how much. I mean, it's been as high as $550 an acre foot, which is around here about 5,000 a miner's inch.
Yeah.
And then there's certain times of the year you only get it, and if you don't use it, you lose it. But everybody knows that for the district, everybody has a benefit for the district to be there. So everybody pays operations and maintenance into the district,
It's like your
be part of
PG&E
that
bill.
district.
You're paying infrastructure costs.
And then
For the poles and
transmission
the
or
transmission.
usage, yeah.
Right. It's the same
Yeah,
kind
same
of
type thing.
theory.
And it's, I think it was because of the state requiring, everybody to sell water as a volumetric unit. Did that, I think, I'm pretty sure and they went to this other method. So you kind of pay for the district, and some years, like in 2014 or 2014, one district probably didn't have any water to sell. But you had to pay for the operations of district for it to be there for the next year.
Okay. All right, next slide, Chris. We've talked a lot about the transfers. This is just a summary of the transfers out and the transfers in. The transfers out are primarily associated with the, transfers in are associated with engineering for the most part. Transfers out are associated with internal services.
On that last slide, just, are you asking if we approve this to abolish the ones that aren't funded, or are you just gonna leave them off to the side somewhere?
We are proposing where we think the reserves should be, well, we're not proposing to modify the policy just yet. We want to do a deeper dive through the rate setting process and have a more thorough dialogue about what reserves should be, so that we can have exactly this discussion related to how do we want to handle drought contingency, how do we want to do these things? Because you know, the higher you set your reserves, it directly impacts your rate.
Mhm.
And so for right now, what we're more highlighting is we are not compliant with the current reserve policy. This is what the current reserve policy is. This is where we're proposing we target or dedicate this money to in the reserve
2024,
only.
maybe for 2025, we'll do something long lasting.
Absolutely.
So Jennifer, I'm wondering, would you like to take a break, or do we want to just continue on forward?
It's 10:20.
10:20.
10?
Yeah,
I keep looking
10:20.
at that going, golly, is it that?
Yeah, we need to change our clocks.
Can we make the reserve 21 million just to be even?
But then it makes our other numbers uneven.
Yeah, no,
So Just a question.
Oh, yes.
Do we want to take a quick 5-minute break? Anybody want
I would say yes.
to? Okay. So 5 minutes.
Sure.
Thank you.
All right, can we get the presentation back up?
I don't think I got your gavel though, we officially are back open.
Yeah, we're officially back open.
All right, we are on the Fund 10 Water Capital. As requested by the board, we did include a table of the capital projects that we removed. And there was primarily just a function of trying to be more conservative with the budget. So we did comb back through all of the capital expenditures and made some modifications to ensure we're not running a deficit.
Can I ask a question about this area? So in the staff report, it says that, the, deficit that has been created this year is due to one-time expenditures that have been rolled over from year to year and grant reimbursable expenses. I just wanted to understand how expenditures rolled over from one year to another wouldn't have revenue also rolled over. But I didn't understand that statement.
So we don't roll revenue over ever, it's rebooked every year.
Okay.
But in past practice at the district was not to daylight the rollover projects or the projects. So if we, for example, if we have project A that we think we're gonna complete in 2023, but we know it's going to slide for whatever reason into 2024, before we never rebudgeted those projects. Now we rebudget the remaining work for 2024. So one of the big projects that's kind of rolling over that you're seeing a lot of, and this is more in Fund 70, is like, for example, related to English Meadows, is a reimbursable project through grant work. And so it gets washed, the expenditures and the revenues get washed.
Okay, so I just am curious, so the expenditure, in that state, those expenditures are related to watershed and will be reimbursed through the grant?
Some of them are not, some of them are regular capital projects.
Thank you.
We did, as I say, we unfunded about 1.2 million from what we had proposed, and that's included in those tables. The transfer summary, let's see, does this work for me? The transfer summary for Fund 15 is, that transfer summary is equal to the proposed annual amount. So that's coming from the parent fund to the capital fund, and that is likely what you would see built into the rates.
Mm-hmm.
Fund 15 capital projects. These are consistent, I'm not going to review them one by one. This is consistent with our capital workshop we went through. And I do just want to acknowledge that Jonathan, as you've met him last meeting, he does a great job of managing our equipment and fleet. So
That was nice.
it is really nice to have a real good control, centralized control over fleet purchases now.
Quick question on this year's project. Pet Hill Extension, is that being done this year?
Yeah, we were trying to finish up with right of way so the maintenance can go in there and do that work, and I don't know what the status is of that right of way. I can get that for you.
Thanks.
Capital project capacity fees, there is very little actual work being done on the capacity fees, but we are proposing to fund the district-funded water line extension projects that are associated with the last three remaining with the capacity fees, because they are in the new system. So that did alleviate a lot of burden off of the ratepayers.
Cool. So they went out to bid, right?
We have not, did they go back, did we
Two of them, Valley Lane and Maranatha, has just gone out to bid last week. Anticipate those bidding first week in December, and then we would
bring them to the board.
Those are the projects that we went out to bid once and received terrible bids, so this is our
Right.
second round.
Yeah.
The assessment districts, the revenues associated with the assessments placed off parcels and the expenditures are associated with both the, annual disclosure report, but as well as the, Cement Hills fair share portion of the debt that's associated with state fund, revolving fund that we had received. That's the one that we want to work on, to
Right.
kind of analyze really who owes what still, and then possibly to get it re-amortized.
Uh-huh. And, just one last, do we have a, like a termination date? Oh, no, wait, never mind, that was a bond question. Never mind.
There's a termination date associated with the state revolving fund loan,
Okay.
and then there's another small loan of paying back the water fund. So we're gonna bring all that back forward in
Yeah,
the package,
remember all the debt pieces.
for sure. We will do that. Fund 30 recreation, this is consistent with what we proposed. The only huge change in recreation this year is related to the removal of that one full-time equivalent. It still is receiving a significant subsidy from hydropower, as we know, has a very little projected ending fund balance. And this does not meet any reserve policy. So what this means is that there could be times where recreation is would have to rely on the total district funds for any kind of issue. This is an ongoing challenge, definitely needs some focus. That will be addressed somewhat in our item that we bring back in December related to recreation. And then we're also going to address Director Calder's, questions related to why we do, what.
Do recreation.
Yeah, and I think it's a
really good
valid
question.
And I'm looking forward to unraveling the Quimby Act requirements.
Recreation.
Davis Grunski.
We're just gonna have a toll booth when you come in if you have an out-of-county driver's license.
There you go.
Honor system.
No honor system.
No.
Start charging for the toilet.
Your own.
Bring your own toilet. The variations, that were shown between what we proposed at the workshop versus now is associated with that, basically that salary. The Fund 30 transfers, they do have a portion of responsibility for Fund 70, which is Internal Services Fund, also related to the engineering and then their fair share portion of the Fund 70 CIPs. And then there's obviously the giant transfer in, which is the hydropower subsidy. This does include, the caveat that we are intending for the U.S. Forest Service still to operate that upper division.
I was gonna ask about that.
Yeah, the budget, the number, related to that concessionaire contract, or them being the
Mhm.
contract provider, is in there. We did include a 5% increase, but $383,000 payment to them, but we have not heard, they're always really, really behind.
Mm.
So that percentage increase that we're associating with that budget line item is a little unknown.
It could be more.
Yeah, we haven't seen them increase anything a lot. They don't even increase their fees ever, so,
Yeah, they just subsidize everything.
pretty much.
It would
You
be
know how I
good-
feel
oh.
about it.
I know, that one is very difficult.
Well, we all feel
But-
that, but it'd be good if Trevor had, I don't know if you know about that, but we were operating campgrounds and there was some issues and board decided to no longer operate them.
Yeah, I was
Were you
involved
here?
last year, yeah.
Oh, okay, I couldn't remember.
Yeah, it's a function, just essentially a function of risk.
Yeah, it's just mitigating
It was a
risk.
good move.
Yeah, it was a
You're
good
not gonna
move.
entertain a motion to pull this out and vote on it separately,
What?
What are we talking about?
383.
Yeah.
To the Forest Service.
No, and we don't have a choice, is my understanding.
I thought we did,
Let's have that conversation.
Yeah, let's do that every time.
I know, that becomes our argument every year. Oops, I skipped in. Okay.
Mhm.
Hydroelectric, it is ending with a reserve. The big changes with hydroelectric from what you saw to what is being proposed is reducing the staffing as well as increasing the revenue, which is associated with the revenue from investments. This is the big difference. The budget is $118,000 lower. Operating reserves analysis by policy requires 6 months operating reserve, and then it's that insurance and catastrophic reserve, and then the accrued leave liability reserve. And this is how we are proposing to fund it this year. We are just above the stated targeted reserve level, and that is what drove us to do the reductions that we made.
On this Fund 50 reserves of $250,000 for accrued leave, and then there was another number of $250,000 for accrued leave on another fund.
Water fund.
Water fund. So we actually altogether then would have $500,000 in accrued leave. Is that right? You'd add them together, okay.
Yeah, we go through and do an analysis every year of how much the accrued leave is. And then we kind of try to look at retirees and what big payouts would occur. But this has also, we've done a lot of work in the new MOU to start reducing that liability over time. One is lowering the vacation cap, but two would also be the alternative option that we've discussed of, right now, there is no sick leave cap and staff gets paid out for 50% of their sick leave. And, some people could get like an $80,000 payment. We're looking at whether it would be more cost beneficial to the district to amend our CalPERS contract to have that leave turned into service credits instead of doing the payout. But we just got the valuation back from the CalPERS actuary, and we haven't finished the analysis yet. So we'll bring an item forward to the board, because that, that's gonna be a decision, which method is better for the district.
Thank you.
Fund 50 transfers, they are, as we've talked about, and the big one is that recreation subsidy. The other large one is associated with the CIP transfer and then the internal services transfer. We did make those modifications, as noted in the packet, related to reducing the capital expenditures. And I do think it's important until we really wrap our hands around the future capital commitments for Scotts Flat Spillway and as well as Chicago Park to keep capital as low as possible in hydro so that we can get a better handle on what's going on.
You want to start allocating a certain amount of money every year besides what we're spending?
Oh, into more reserves? The capital reserves are really high. I think that the bigger question is do you, and this is something we need to work through with the financial advisors, is do you continue to keep money kind of pigeonholed for the upcoming FERC license, or is it better spent for some of the larger projects? We need to plan all of that out.
Well, I had that question on, I guess it's been part of the next slide, but when you talk about the FERC reserve of $35 million, is that what we're reserving for this upcoming year, or is that the total that we've reserved in?
That is the stated reserve by policy. So we are $1.17 million under the stated reserve. So by policy, hydro capital is supposed to have $15 million in just straight capital reserve and $35 million in the FERC reserve.
Right.
The budget we proposed is $1.1 million less than that. That is mostly related to last year's capital expenditures being this year, we've really ratcheted the budget down so that we're not exceeding revenues. That's mostly related to last year's capital expenditures.
I guess my question though goes to, and, because I may be misremembering, but I know that we had, you know, for the last number of years, as we saw these FERC license fees coming towards us, this big freight train, we started going, oh my God, we have to start reserving for that. And so the question then is 35 million the sum total of what we have in FERC reserves, or is that for this particular budget and there's more reserves for FERC sitting in some other pot? No?
No, that's the
It's
total.
the same number, it's been there forever.
Yeah.
I know, but I just was wondering, is it 35 a year and then we're
Oh,
just
no.
adding up?
No, when we're talking about reserves, we're talking about the portion of the cash fund balance associated with that fund that is not dedicated to expenditures
Understood.
and isn't dedicated to some other type of reserve. So the FERC reserve is just a layer in that cash balance.
I understood that, but I just was wondering if this was, you know, compounding
No,
every year and getting more. Okay, thank you.
That'd be nice.
Wouldn't that be nice? Well, I was kind of hoping.
it increases the fund balance every year because you receive investment revenue. So
Right.
that's a lot of what the conversations we have to have moving forward. Is it more advantageous to issue debt to pay for capital expenditures? The debt is cheaper than the revenue you can receive from investments.
Right, exactly.
So is that,
It flip-flops all the
Yeah.
time.
so that scenario, that thought process applies to if we got a license.
Yes.
Now we have a big bill the first year. But-
You don't have a big bill the first year.
Well, the first few years, I don't remember the numbers, but there's some big bills. I mean, it starts,
It was front-end loaded.
There's
2 million a year was the average, I remember.
There's a lot of activities that do need to be done within the first 5 to 10 years.
Right.
There are infrastructure projects associated, there's all kinds of plans that have to be developed.
Rec projects.
There are recreation projects, but also my big concern is the reduction in revenue associated with water sales.
Yeah.
The in-stream flows that are associated with the FERC license are really hefty. They are going to impact the long-term viability of hydro and our ratepayers. So that is the one item that I keep referencing when we're talking about modeling for Plan for Water, is I do want to utilize that model to see if we can get some alleviation on what your in-stream flow requirements to smooth out some of the unmet demands in later years. Because the pre-negotiated in-stream flows associated with FERC, they're pretty damaging.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Is there any timeline for that black box at first, when it's coming due?
Any what?
Yeah.
Timing for.
This FERC black box, no. There's been a lot of movement on it lately, from a regulatory, legal perspective. We will provide an update once we just received a filing that the State Water Resources Control Board made in response to our filing we made for them to reconsider the 401 cert waiver for the PG&E project. So we haven't analyzed that newest legal opinion or legal document that just came out at the end of last week, but we will, and then we'll report back to the board. As the board knows, that's an extremely complex legal situation with things going on in multiple different courts. So we will, once we get through this most recent documentation we received, we'll report back.
Thank you.
No, it was funny, we actually were talking about yesterday, we're like, would it be 2 years or 10 years? We were talking to DWR about the voluntary agreements, and they're in the same boat about when they're gonna get their FERC license for
Right, it's like we have the flume of doom and then we have the black box of whatever.
Yeah, I think that we could probably have a pretty good betting pool going on when we get our FERC license,
Yeah.
$100 a piece.
Yeah, cool.
You have to pick the quarter and the year.
Can't we sarcastically thank all the people who support FERC requirements?
No. No, that would not be nice.
Hopefully the power just went out during that statement.
I won't do that.
All right, so Fund 55 transfer summary. It's only associated, so that is the annual cost of capital. These are the capital projects. We did reduce some of the capital projects just to reduce the burden on Fund 50. Those are identified in your packet.
But those projects, where did they stand? The ones that were used, were where they stand on the matrix.
Priority.
Priority scheme.
I didn't do we didn't redo our priority numbers, did we? We'd have to, we could do that and
Okay,
bring it
well,
back to you.
just interesting, to, you know.
How it shifted.
I fully agree with doing that to make this work. There's the however of those projects that we keep talking about.
Right.
Yeah. We can relook at those priorities, and when we do our next capital update, we can talk about that. Fund 70's internal services fund, there's no reserves needed because that money's all through transfers. It's the overhead departments, basically everybody, a lot of people in this room. Staffing did not change. The cost allocation did not change. We do a blended formula. We still have on our plate to get the cost allocation study going. That's been a little bit slower than we would like, but that does need to be done. The internal services, 16.3 million. There's a lot of hefty items in this one because they're mostly items that cover the whole district.
Mm-hmm.
Watershed's at $500,000. We do still have slated to be consistent with our strategic priorities of obtaining grants for watershed projects.
Right.
Board knows, we just,
You've got
yeah,
it.
well, almost.
Oh, almost.
We just have to have the board approve
Close.
it. It's close, related to another, grant from Sierra Nevada Conservancy, who's just been a wonderful partner, and that would be a grant to do the NEPA work that'd be required to do some more forest management up
Right.
on U.S. Forest Service property. So that's a real good collaborative one.
How close is that to a stream?
Right around all of our
All of it.
reservoirs up Jackson Meadows.
Are any
Bowman.
grants available for more off-stream watershed projects that actually affect the watershed, but they're not next to a stream? Like some
Meadows?
ranchers and farmers?
On private property?
Are you looking for money?
He didn't say BEP.
I know, God, you haven't said that word for a long time.
No, but you'll hear it today. No, I'm just saying that the watershed is much larger than just next to a stream or,
Right.
Right.
anything out there available that?
RCD, there's plenty of RCD
Good though.
funding available. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Rich.
Just, seems like a lot of, adjacent riparian areas to the watershed. That the money's for that, and it's not for the extended watershed that we see on the ranches and farmers, on the farms. And yet there's a lot of work that needs to be done there.
We only apply for grants that apply to basically public property. So I think that
Right.
it'd just be a matter of a private property owner aligning what they're trying to do with the grant. Yeah.
Fire safety.
I agree with that.
RCD,
Yeah.
they've got CAL FIRE has specific ones for private property owners,
Yeah, I think CAL FIRE grants are
There's a
not
lot.
issued to
stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
True.
Nevada City got that grant, and they just like identified 4 very large property owners at the Deer Creek,
Yeah.
Deer Creek, but that was CAL FIRE and all these different agencies came, anyway. Yeah, yeah.
All of Fund 70 is transfers except for, with the exception of any grant revenue. And then we went through this already in detail, but I did want to give you an opportunity to ask any more questions since we kind of jumped to this and then jumped back, but I thought after the questions start coming, I thought, you know what, you're right, that might be better to talk about first, so then you keep it in mind.
Thank you.
That's good.
So we've made the staffing reductions, and, as I stated earlier, please note, we are taking South Yuba Canal, we're trying to be extremely efficient with our resources, but we may need to come back after we have a better handle on the workload, so we'll keep you apprised.
Doug wants to come up and ask, we're gonna tunnel.
The tunnel, right,
Oh.
he submitted his $900 million capital project for the tunnel, and I put it on, I've put it to next year.
Like 2 months away.
Okay.
I would assume this is gonna become like risk item number 1 through 5 somewhere
South Yuba Canal?
right away. Is that January that we go over the risk assessment? Do you do that every year? I remember doing it, I just don't.
We did it as part of the plan for water process. No, but I do think the South Yuba Canal needs to have a larger focused conversation in the context of 5-year capital planning, but also long-term planning and watershed planning. It is a risky endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
One of the items, and we'll get into this when we talk about the 5-year plan, is we really took a look at some of these kind of projects that seem insurmountable now and that we don't have money for, but that if we could kind of chunk away at a little bit at a time, how much money would we set aside for them and built that into the 5-year capital?
Yep.
So we'll bring forth what our methodology is to how we are thinking about doing that, because at some point, if you never do anything, you always have a problem. It's,
That's right.
you know, are we ever gonna be able to issue a $900 million bond to deal with it? Probably not. But could we afford to do $1 million a year? Maybe. You know, that's what we have broken down for both South Yuba Canal and also for the treated water system replacement, which has never been done with any kind of method to madness. So we'll have those conversations. But South Yuba Canal is obviously one of our biggest risks. And then with this, our recommendations for this upcoming year focus on OPEB and UAL. Sandra, are we still slated to have our OPEB December 13th? We have an expert coming to fill you in on OPEB and unfunded liability. December meeting, full cost allocation study, 5-year capital program, recreation opportunity or recreation operations, and the rate study. So the big takeaways I took from this presentation is that the board would like a rate process update, including a schedule. We will bring the recreation documents during the December recreation overview, financial overview, that substantiate why we're doing this, why we have to subsidize people from Bay Area. We will note a change in the minutes to reflect that it was, what did we say, probably likely intended to maybe subsidize rates.
It says
Yeah.
in
We'll be-
original intention,
Yeah, we'll be more straightforward.
which seems to indicate that the intention might have changed.
Yeah.
Make sure-
No.
So I know we're gonna
Sometimes we're just wording.
public comment, but ready for a motion?
Well, wait, I have a question.
Almost.
Oh, wait, I have one more item. We're gonna
Yeah.
bring back an item related to assessment district.
Okay.
This might seem a little odd, but since this whole thing gets eventually put on our website, right? So this is very picky, but, you know, somebody has to do it. But, on this sheet, on this sheet that shows, you know, customer service, and it shows the number in the positions that you have at the end of our thing. Look at the top, it says interfund transfer schedule. It's titled interfund transfer.
Well, we'll fix that.
Yeah, so I think it'd be good to.
We will put together a whole budget book.
Yeah, oh, that's great, because
Yeah.
I usually end up doing my own, so
And we will put together a budget book, and then we can give you all your own hard copy if you so desire to have one.
I have back from the beginnings. My husband says, "Leave all this stuff."
Put the CIP as a standalone document
Mhm.
on the website.
Sure.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a good idea.
And I think in your CIP update link, are they standalone? Is there a summary sheet in it? Make sure.
I tried to find the CIP online, and it wasn't intuitive for me to find.
We'll look into that.
You know, kind of the historical at CIP over time.
Okay.
You're ready now? So I move to adopt resolution 2023-49, adopting the 2024 budget and capital improvement plan as recommended by staff.
And I'll second that. Good job. Yeah, very sure.
Do we have any public comment on the 2024 annual budget? Okay, seeing none, we'll take a vote.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 4,
No.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. This was
Thank you. This is
really a
very
good,
robust discussion.
Yep. And we'll move on to item 4, compensation plan.
Okay, good morning, board.
Morning, Greg.
Morning, Greg Jones, Assistant General Manager. Bringing this second item back to you, it is sort of a follow-up from last board meeting's, agenda item for the MOU. There are many similarities of district, and it's roughly about 20 employees represented under this particular benefit and compensation plan. I'll remind you that this is not a contract to work under. It is just a benefit and compensation plan that explains benefit and comps for represented employees. So many of the articles are very similar in nature. Most of the financial and economic items are exactly the same. So in terms of the COLA that we discussed last time, in terms of the step advancement, there's a step to all of these particular positions as well that will be instituted in January 1st, 2024. Let's see, same goes for holiday as well as all of the other element items that are economic. Insurance-wise, we have also removed the health reimbursement account opportunity and just gone for the same allocation of funds to each individual's premium for insurance. So in this, it's a 3-year term. COLA, like I said, beginning January of 2024. The next 2 years is also a range. The COLA will fluctuate between the 2% and 5% range in years 2025 and 2026. Let's see. Those employees who are given a boot allowance, it is also increased from $180 to $400 on their boot allowance on an annual basis. And that brings me to this package over a 3-year period for these 20 classifications is roughly about a $1.46 million package overall, as opposed to over what is existing. So, and that's all reflected in the budget that you just approved forward on. So this is not new. This is inclusive within that budget. So we're asking you to approve Resolution 2023-50 today. And if you have any questions specific to any of the items, let me know.
I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
It just occurred to me, so when we give the COLAs, is there anything built in for when the insurance costs go up by some amount? So that, like, we have a COLA for salary and then maybe a COLA for insurance insurance costs? Or is anytime the insurance goes up, the employee absorbs that?
The employee, the district pays 75%, the employee absorbs 25% of the increase.
Oh, okay, of the increase.
Yeah,
So,
just of the increase. It's like $20.
oh, okay.
So the percentage increase the district will pick up 75% of that increase above next year's.
I see, because I know that, like,
Because we don't
you
know.
have a set amount for whatever you pay into
Correct.
for the benefit.
We don't know what they'll be in the year 2025, so we've built in that the district will pick up 75% of the employees
Okay.
of that 20.
And so are those, is that accounted for somewhere, those increased costs of benefits?
It would be accounted for in the following year's budget. So
Okay.
the
We're trailing each year because we don't have the information.
we don't get the information till about August. We get it in August. Oh, it is November. We get it in August. As each year, CalPERS issues the new rates, and then we include those new rates into our new budget projections.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just like to make a comment, someone who we talked a couple of days ago and really commended staff and everyone for coming up with this.
Mhm.
I thought it was very fair.
We have a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move that we adopt resolution number 2023-50, ratifying the 2024-2026 benefit and compensation plan and authorizing changes in wages, hours, and terms and conditions of employment for unrepresented employees, and authorize the general manager to execute necessary documentation.
Second?
Do we have any public comment? Items, benefits and compensation plan. Seeing none, we'll take a vote.
Division 1,
Yes.
Division 2,
Aye.
Division 4,
Aye.
Division 5,
Yes.
Division 3.
Aye. Okay, so we'll move on to workshop item, district policy 1140, receivable write-off workshop. Thank you, Sandra.
Can I say one quick thing? Talked to, actually, a couple of people that didn't understand that a workshop is a give and take. So anyone can chime in when they want to and ask questions or input. And, we can talk back and forth and have a dialogue.
Thanks for that reminder, Rich.
Yeah,
That's very nice.
Good reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good morning, Board. Sandra Dunlap, Director of Finance. Bringing forward a new district policy. So this is an accounts receivable write-off policy, and it's just for discussion today. So I've drafted a policy. It's pretty short and straightforward, but basically the district doesn't have a policy currently. So the customer accounts, we have lots of customer accounts. We kind of separate it by utility billing and everything else. So we bill for damages, we bill PG&E, we bill just various other accounts. And so this is really to focus on all those other accounts, because the utility billing side really has a pretty good process, because we can put the delinquents on their tax roll.
Right, can lean.
So this is just, again, another one of those cleanup items, so we can keep our aging report and our accounts receivable more accurate. It gets really hard to analyze and maintain if we have an aging report that's, 200 pages long. And that's because currently we don't have the authority to kind of write off, any dollar amount. So not even a dollar if there was a rounding or something like that. These customer accounts are remaining open. So we would like to clean those up. So this is a pretty standard best practice amongst a lot of different agencies. And the big point here is on that second page, it's kind of like the approval amount. So we wanted to give customer service, because customer service really manages the process. So Aurora's on vacation, but kudos to her, because she helped work through this policy as well. So it was really a joint effort. And so we would like to give her $100, or that position, the authority to kind of just maintain those.
I don't think this is being presented to.
Not a work, it's not a.
Oh, okay.
No, it's just a 2-page.
Folks online could go to the website if they wanted to.
Yeah, sorry, not a PowerPoint. And so that table really is giving the authority, or allowing internal staff to, do some of the cleanup items. And then the bigger items, we want to bring those forward. We just want to bring those to your attention. So we plan, if everything gets approved on the December 13th meeting, I'm hoping to have an item to take action on that meeting to do our first round of kind of cleanup before our year end. So with that, if you have a question.
I have two questions.
Go ahead.
How much are we currently, uncollectible or delinquent?
I don't know that full amount yet. So I'm working with Aurora, because really it's, one, I don't understand the system quite yet in the report. So she's going to help pull the aging reports and everything like that. Really, I don't think it's a terribly large amount, again, because the utility billing side, right, that's majority of our customers, and that's handled through the delinquent accounts going on the tax roll. So those kind of take care of themselves.
From this.
Yeah, this is everything else. So we may have had billed a customer who damaged NID's property at one point in time. I know there's a couple of those on there. I don't think that the dollar amount's that big. It's just really the reporting, and when we start to do those aging reports and analyze, like I said, instead of looking at maybe a 50-page report, it's a 200-page report because of all the cents and dollars that are on there, so.
It just puts a cog in
Yes.
doing the, what you have to do.
Yes, yes.
Then if it is delinquent or uncollectible, it goes to a lien or
So-
goes to the county, we still write it off?
Correct, yes. So in our
And if the
system,
money comes in,
it's recovered as a revenue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just general fund?
Yep. Yeah, but we really want to take care of it in a timely manner, right? So if we have, don't quote me on this, but if we have stuff sitting on the aging right now that are, 5 years old, we're really not gonna collect that at this point in time.
Right.
So on top of cleaning that stuff up, working together on a process, and establishing probably a vendor, a collection agency on the non-utility billing items. So we can come up with a process with Aurora's team and really manage those timely. So especially the big dollar amount ones, we have to assess, if it's gonna be a $50, it's probably not worth all of our efforts to
Right.
push it all the way through, but we will still do the due diligence. I think currently Aurora's team is actively following up on all of these, so, it's a lot of paperwork too. So if we're really not gonna collect it, helping her team have a timeline to say, okay, you can stop the notifications, let's take care of it, either send it to collections or bring it forward for a write-off. And so, yeah, it's just another cleanup item.
Yeah, all of the money owed on aging is then shown as a receivable in your financials.
Right.
There's no reasonable, expectation of recovering that money. It needs to be written off so that it's not arbitrarily inflating our fund balance.
During COVID, people were able to not pay. There was, and it went up to, what, 600,000 or so? Did we ever get reimbursed by the state?
I don't know the total dollar amount, but
We've gotten reimbursed for a
Yeah.
large amount of it.
yeah, there was a state, water arrearages program that agencies could, and we did, I just don't know that dollar amount.
I don't remember what it was.
But since then, since the district started earlier this year being able to do water shutoffs again, that also kind of forced people to catch up on their, bills. And then if not, they go to the property tax roll and we collect it that way.
Cause and effect.
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm wondering, under what kind of circumstances should we at higher level, 10,000 plus?
It'd be like an insurance claim, someone damages our property. A lot of times what we'll do though is, for example, if it was an insurance claim, somebody owes us money and they're not paying, we do and can take them to small claims court. Unfortunately, even if you get a judgment through small claims court, it can be extremely difficult to collect on. So it would be something like that,
And
likely.
I imagine quite rare.
It's very rare, something.
You suggested an amount for something else. I think it was litigation. Increased your amount that you can approve?
That was, yes, similar claims. So those are claims against the district.
That amount that is it equal to this or different?
It's,
I thought, yeah.
10,000.
it was 10,000, yeah,
Similar.
yeah. Yeah, those are more claims against the district. This would be more claims against somebody else,
I mean,
yeah.
Gotcha.
We build somebody else.
I have a question. I don't see in the policy, and I've read it a couple times, but about that you or somebody is empowered then to turn these over to a collection agency. Is there something in here that says that that's permitted, or that?
We can do that now.
Uh-huh.
We can turn something over to collection agency.
Oh, you can?
now.
Okay.
We're just not established, we don't work with a current collection agency or anything like that. And also, very good point, because this is kind of a shell. Next year, I'm hoping to work again with the customer service team and do a revised version of this, because we don't have a process right now. So when we establish a process, we.
Yeah, it would seem like, if the amount is X or, over X, then you send it to a collection. I mean, I just would think there would be a procedural matrix there.
There's a lot of work to be done once
Okay.
this gets adopted, yes. Because there's also, we have to go through and take a look at statute of limitation consideration, all those, need to do a full analysis. And then most agencies have a collection and a firm on contract
Right.
that you just automatically goes to collections.
I'd just like to say that personally experienced with Aurora, that she's very diligent about trying to help somebody. This is like way down the road.
Yeah.
They
But-
send people out to properties to help reassess how much water they should be,
Mhm.
these sorts of things.
Good point.
By the time somebody gets shut off for non-payment or going to collections, we try to go way overboard.
10 extra months.
Yeah.
No, you guys are great.
Yeah.
So, we will then bring this back for formal consideration at a later date.
Public comment.
Chat.
Yes, public comment on our new code write-off. Okay, seeing none, we will move on to the general manager.
General manager.
I only have a couple of quick items. We touched on a little bit already. One is that, huge kudos to Kian for all of the enormous, crazy amount of work he's had to undertake over the past about 6 to 8 weeks related to South Utica Canal.
For that.
10 years, yeah, that agreement was signed in what, 2011?
That's when we started working on it,
Yeah.
Started working on acquiring the South Yuba Canal in 2011. We signed the closing documents Monday, was it Monday? Yes, it was Monday. We dropped them off, so we should be getting recorded, and there will be a whole, new slew of things we have to do that are associated with the actual acquisition, start powerhouse, all those things.
It literally just recorded at 11 o'clock.
Oh,
Okay.
boy. Yay. We're proud owners of the South Yuba Canal.
Yeah.
We have that risk assessment now?
Yeah, right. Action one,
And went with that.
oh,
700.
yeah,
700. I was thinking it was like,
You know what might be a good idea is we should bring back an item of now what we need to do, because
yeah, what are the next steps?
Now that we've.
it's not done. So there are more things we have to do, and
Tour.
there's a conservation,
We want the tour.
the South Yuba Canal, are you gonna start, get an inner tube in the top and go drive it down?
That's it, I want a water park.
We could make a lot of money riding that thing down. We'll bring back an item, because there's conservation easements associated, all kinds of things that have been in the works for a long time that have probably been lost in the noise at this point. So we'll bring an item back to update the board on it.
Preparation of the, conservation easement.
Yeah.
That's gonna be before the end of the year or next year?
Now,
Now.
we own it.
Do we submit money for the stewardship fund for that, or?
The stewardship fund rolled the endowment over from the watershed land stewardship to the Bear Yuba Land Trust. So that was all part of the closing that we did.
So somebody else
Yeah.
put the money up?
When it all shook out with all the back and forth payments, debits and credits, PG&E owes us a check of like $98,000.
Well, that can go to the
Recreation.
accounts receivable policy.
So we'll bring an item back to give everybody a new update now that I know we've talked about it a lot, but we haven't really talked about what it means that we own it and what we have to do, so we'll do that.
Great.
And then, the only other thing another really awesome thing is that, Greg and NASA were, as we talked about, successful in getting notification that we're most likely gonna get a grant from the Sierra Nevada Conservancy. So big kudos to them, and we largely get grants from them because they do such a good job on doing the work. So, so that is, great news. And then the last item, one of the items that came out of our employee surveys that we've been doing, which is on my list to bring a summary to the board, is that we could enhance our kind of onboarding of new supervisors and training and leadership. So we are gonna have our kind of first ever annual Supervisor Leadership Academy next week, and it's a slated day. Some of it's intended to tackle things, the discipline process, the new MOU, kind of housekeeping things. Then there's a leadership component to it, and then there's a little bit of a planning component, so we can set up a better structure to ensure that our supervisors are supported as they grow in their career. A lot of times, public agencies hire supervisors and just kind of throw them into the deep end of the pool. So we
hired you.
I'd already supervised though, so I was pretty good there.
We're into the shallow end with the sharks.
Yeah, I think it was more like the sewer. I'm kidding. But big kudos to Greg and Naomi and his team. They've really structured a good first academy, and so we'll report back on how it goes. I think it's gonna be exciting, and we're trying to really put more effort in developing a framework of support and growth for our staff and our superstars, right? Because if you don't kind of engage them and hire them and show them a path,
Right.
you know, they can want to go to PG&E.
Any benefit for a director who,
The only benefit is that I'd love all of you to be there, but I didn't notice it as a public meeting, so you would have to Rochambeau, because I can't have all of them here.
Right.
But that's.
Rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, rock, paper, isn't that what it's
no,
called?
it is.
I never thought about why it was called Rochambeau, though.
I know, I never understood.
Oh.
Yeah, bro.
I have, just a comment about the South Yuba Canal, and I wrote it to you and you acknowledged, but, it's like, I don't know when the timing is right, but we want to really push our messaging around that, about what a great coup this was, how important this is for the community, you know, all the stuff that we all know, but get that messaging out
The
there.
talking point.
Yeah, we've got a joint release with PG&E
That'll
specifically
be-
for that, and then we have our own local.
Yeah, we need our own.
We do. It's
People
ready to
don't
go.
like PG.
We're just waiting until it's all complete.
We had to wait for a lot. It was a very, very dicey last-minute scramble.
It always is.
It was, and even the, the notary with the title company was,
Shaking their head.
yeah, there's a lot of different easements and a lot of stuff going on, so.
Yeah,
And PG&E is, proposing a 22% price increase.
Well, they should be proposing a decrease since we just took the South Yuba Canal.
that's right.
right.
Should protest their rates.
Right.
Make sure that's in the, and that's all I have.
Nicely done.
Okay, so for director updates, let's start with you, Trevor.
I attended the Placer County Farm Bureau, you did. The interesting thing there was RCD has some soil amendment programs that I found, really interesting. So, discounts on getting some, amendments into your property to try to increase absorption rates, which I thought was great. Other than that, I'll leave it
Thanks.
to the next director.
Chris?
So I had a, phone call from a constituent who was impacted by the recent construction of the North Day Road pipeline replacement. And, he was most complimentary of the staff that he worked with, especially called out, Cameron Price for working really close and doing a great job of, they had to relocate his water meter. He was kind of impacted by the construction, but he was most appreciative of how they handled it. So kudos to Cameron and the district for that. Go off and get those kind of phone calls.
That's nice.
And this Saturday night is the Farm Bureau Dinner, Nevada County Farm Bureau Dinner. We'll see you all there.
Now, how many directors are going?
Yeah, we need to have a talk about that, but everyone just needs to be really, act like you don't know each other.
Don't talk business.
Don't talk business.
It's a social occasion.
Do that.
We never do that.
We're all-
We have so many
we're all
things to talk
going,
about.
and it's, maybe we have to buy our own separate tickets.
Haven't got them.
I've come as the South Sutter director.
I'm afraid you're aged out of that question.
That's all I have.
Okay, Ricky?
Yeah, I spent a great deal of time just working this last couple of weeks. It's been very intense on my career side. I am going to the Farm Bureau dinner. I'm looking forward to that. It always is fun. And, there was one other thing, but I don't remember, so thank you. That's it for me.
Yeah, I have actually a little more than normal. So Greg and I went to the town hall meeting, fire town hall meeting at Alta Sierra. And I thought it was not well attended, but all the right people were there. So Congressman Kevin Kiley spoke highly of our staff and how NID is operated, made it a point. Chief Robitaille also loves working with the staff and said he sure needs the backbone extension program with all the fire hydrants.
He waited till the last minute.
Greg was there, he can, huh?
Yes, he did mention it.
Thank you. All right. So
Unprovoked.
now, yeah, unprovoked.
Unprovoked and
Yeah,
everything.
but he got it in. But now we need to go to him and say, okay, let's come up with the money. This tank rebate thing.
Mhm.
So the fire marshal, Mason, mentioned that Greenhorn, you put in two 20,000 gallon
We
tanks.
did. Our
You don't-
Firewise community did it.
And they don't count for fair play, or fair play,
Right, they don't. It's
because they're not 30,000 gallons.
Oh,
But it said 2,600 gallons, right? That's what I heard. So if you have a 2,600 gallon, because some of the ASPOA directors have this problem. If you have a 2,600 gallon water tank with a 2.5-inch fire connector,
Mhm.
you qualify under the FAIR Plan as a community fire hydrant, which is huge. And Mason seems like he wants to work with a lot of people who have ponds and
Mhm.
everything. So this could be significant. And so I'd like to see if we can extend or find more money to do this rebate on the tank. But I got misled. I thought you could only buy a 1,600 gallon tank, but a 1,600 gallon tank's and above. And we need to probably come out with, say, you buy a 2,600, check with the fire marshal, and you have a community fire hydrant, which is, you know,
That's
and
a
that
big
goes.
deal.
It's a big deal.
Mhm.
And we may have a run on our rebate program. But it was something that even was talked 3.5 years ago or 3 years ago, about putting these tanks
Mhm.
for fire. And Hank Weston had gotten a hold of me. His, not NID's problem or, thing, but his neighbor, several homes, quite a 6, 7 homes in Lake Wildwood had been built at a certain time when the water piping was defective. And his neighbor's house sprung a leak. They fixed it after a lot of damage. He said, the guy needs one of your smart meters. And Hank and Candy have one. They knew what it was all about, got a hold of Chip, you know, and Steve, and within a week, they had a smart meter, because they were already in Aurora too. They were already in Wildwood. He went and got one of our apps, which we should advertise, and immediately detected another leak. And saved his house again from a huge damage. Great program.
Cool.
So I just want, can we get that out more? Because we're doing a good service out here, and I just can't beat stories like that.
So, with Andy Secco, we were invited to the Placer Earth Care Action meeting on Sunday. We did presentations for both districts. I also went to the Placer County Farm Bureau, meeting last night, and Greg did a great job, providing an overview of voluntary agreements and the plan for water. And I wanted to kind of bring to the board's attention a couple things. One is that at the December meeting, we are going to have a vote for the positions of board president and vice president, and so we should all be prepared for that agenda item, and I'm sure Jennifer will put it on there. One of the things that has been on my plate for quite a while is to develop the GM performance evaluation tool. I am so happy to say that's done now. Just for the board's background, what I got in creating that form was 6 or 7 different city manager, general manager position descriptions from different agencies across the state. I got the position, or the performance evaluation tool that's currently used in NID for the management team. I accessed, the general manager's position description and list of performance competencies, and I did web-based research on, kind of competency-based performance evaluation tools for executive leadership. So that's the foundation for the form that you'll be seeing. Chris is just wrapping up the final formatting of the form. It will be online, or if you have a hard copy, and Dustin and his office is going to administer the process. As I understand it, the projected timeline for that is to have it administered later this month, correct?
Yes, but just please note, Chris and Dustin don't know their roles yet. I hadn't gotten to that yesterday. So, surprise, it's not gonna be that hard though, Chris. We just need someone to do some form batching. Okay.
And I'm just the clearinghouse.
You're the.
He said clearinghouse.
Yes.
I was gonna talk to the administrator. Yeah,
Yeah, so sorry about that.
it was my fault.
So the goal, so then, also at the December meeting, assuming this works with Jennifer's timeline, she and I talked about her going through, priorities for 2024. We did that in 2023, you'll remember, in the February meeting, we went and Jennifer presented all the district's priorities for 2023. She'll be doing that process in December or January.
Yeah, I was just gonna note, these are more operational priorities, not the board priorities.
Yeah.
Just so everyone has the same expectation.
Right.
This is kind of that bigger spreadsheet stuff that okay.
So we're gonna kind of have a year in review. What have we accomplished? What are the goals for the next year? And closed session, we have the discussion of the performance evaluation tool. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, when we had our discussion last February, we had a chance as a board to talk about what we thought were important things for the district to focus on. So this is one of your opportunities to kind of put forth issues of concern. The other way that, because naturally not everything comes up in your mind once a year, so the other opportunity to put forth items for consideration for the district to address is through our director updates. And so as a director, we have a chance to say, we would like to have this issue on the agenda. It's then agendized for where it's appropriate to fit in the schedule. And you can bring forth whatever issue. That could be a work plan, it could be a concern that you have that you want to talk about. So as a board, we put forth we can advance one of these issues to the general manager. We cannot, as individual board members, direct the work of the general manager. So just so the differentiation is clear, if we want her to take action, we have to agree as a board. Now, I'm going to acknowledge that that is not like a cast and concrete approach, because the district makes every attempt to make adjustments and be responsive to board for ad hoc requests. So they do that on an ongoing basis. But when an issue is bigger or has more controversy to it, then it really needs to come as an agendized item so that we have a chance to move forward in a uniform voice to the general manager in the district. So I didn't know, I just, as we're making changes in board leadership, I thought it was good to reiterate.
Well said. Thank you for that summary. That was really great.
Put some bookends to it.
Yeah.
Bookends, with one of our new, yeah.
No, everybody has a lane.
Can I just clarify what I think I heard you say? So through your research and these other resources, you developed a process to grade the performance of the general manager, And you're gonna post that online for us to review, or you're bringing it
We're gonna send it to you for comments.
for comment,
We're
but
gonna-
it's not
we're
an
gonna-
agendized item to ratify?
It normally isn't. The board could make that determination if you wanted to be. The valuation form is not
Just a form,
normally.
right?
Yeah.
We're
it's
just talking about a form,
Just a form.
probably questions, I would imagine, or categories. would be
There's
great.
8 competencies and a 5-scale rating, 5-factor rating scale from, you know.
Sure. I'm just trying to understand, so we're gonna see it, have the opportunity to make comments.
Mhm.
Or it's.
We're gonna
Uh-huh.
send it to you?
Right.
You will each individually complete it, send it to me. Probably I'll compile it, or maybe I'll work with Chris to compile it, and we'll discuss that.
Oh,
But before that
I'm
happens,
not speaking on the content.
Yeah.
The answers. I'm
Right.
speaking on the template.
so Karen did a fantastic job. We just need to kind of, duplicate some of the, like, the grading table thing into the competencies, because it's really first one is fleshed out. Then Chris will make it into a regular form. Chris send it to all of you. You provide any comments you have on the form itself, and then the form can be modified.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
I'll fill out the form the first go around.
No, you're commenting.
I
Yeah.
asked that question.
You're commenting.
Perfect. All right.
Very good, thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Yeah,
Really,
you're
and thank you
welcome.
for doing
Good
that
for
work
Yeah.
of putting together that form.
It took a while.
I know, I know. I remember the last one. Didn't
I
the
said,
last
I
one
am
we
not
did?
leaving the president role until that is done.
That's
Anyway.
really a wonderful
Got
thing.
that.
You're
Yeah.
showing good form.
Well, I think it'll be a conversation, you know.
Yep.
So with that, we have a closed session item, so we will invite public comment for that closed item agenda topic.
But I do not expect any action to.
Okay,
He's got them.
He has them.
Oh, he has it, okay.
no, we don't see any public comment for the closed item, so we will adjourn this session and open the closed session.